The film Escape to Victory is a much-loved movie across football fanatics, but some may not be familiar with the true story that inspired it. The death match, as it was known, was a matchup between FC Start, a group of former players who worked in a bread factory in Nazi-occupied Ukraine, and Flakelf, a side formed up of German soldiers. The matchup would ultimately have grave consequences. This is a story of FC Start versus Flakelf, the death match. In 1941, Ukraine was occupied by Nazi Germany as Hitler gained control over multiple territories and would wreak havoc amongst Ukraine. Come the end of the war, Ukraine would make up almost 40% of the estimated Soviet death toll of between 20 and 27 million. The city of Kyiv would fall under a strict occupation, with curfews in force and thousands of civilians deported for forced labour. German officers were keen to convert their prisoners by using culture to show them an idealistic version of life in Nazi Germany. As Ukraine fell under occupation, the football season was cancelled. Sports enthusiast Joseph Kordik was appointed director at the Kyiv bread factory. He would encounter Nikolai Trusovich on the street while working there, with Trusovich selling lighters in a desperate attempt to stay afloat. Kordik soon found out that Trusovich was once a goalkeeper for Dynamo Kyiv. Trusovich was soon offered a job at the factory, and a little while later he was joined at the factory by 8 other former footballers, some of whom had been his teammates. The factory would ultimately form a team called FC Start, and also had a chef, a guard, and 3 police officers in their side. They would play exhibition matches and impressed well against their opponents. The Nazis were keen to prove their apparent superiority, and hence looked to arrange a matchup. A team called Flakelf were made up of German soldiers from a number of different ranks, and the side was supervised by Hermann Goering, who refused to send the players to the battlefront due to the risk of losing the nation's greatest stars. A match was arranged between FC Start and Flakelf for the 6th of August 1942. The match was supposed to be a means of the Germans reinforcing the notion of Aryan superiority and coerce the Ukrainians into respecting their occupiers. But things did not go to plan. The game would finish 5-1 to Start. This would not do for the German officers, who hastily arranged a rematch in order to save their reputation. 3 days later, the sides would face off again, and at half-time, the stars were shining on Start again, with the Ukrainian side leading 3-1 at the break. During this period, a German officer broke into the Start dressing room and said to Ukrainians, "There are only Germans who can win today." He then went into the Flakelf dressing room and told them they had to win to prove Aryan superiority. Start emerged for the second half, but were inspired by the hordes of Ukrainians in the crowd, many of whom were chanting against the Nazis. FC Start were not done and would win by 5-3. To celebrate, they shared some homemade vodka. They went on to defeat Ruk 8-0, a side founded by Ukrainians with sympathies to Nazi ideologies. Soon after, the German authorities banned matchups between Soviet and German sides to avoid further humiliation. On the 18th of August, all the Start players who worked at the bread factory were rounded up, which some assume may have happened because Ruk's trainer, angry at the 8-0 defeat, told the Germans that some of the Start players were part of the Soviet police force. One of the players, Nikolai Korotik, was tortured to death by the Gestapo. Another, Alexander Tukachenko, was killed after trying to escape interrogation. The other players were sent to a concentration camp just outside Kyiv, where 3 more of them, in Nikolai Trusovich, Alexei Klimenko, and Ivan Kuzmenko, would be executed around half a year later. The remaining survivors would escape the camp at the end of the war, and would go on to be seen as Soviet heroes. In 1964, many of them were given medals of honour, and today a monument stands to the FC Start players outside the Valery Lobanovsky Stadium in Kyiv. The statue will immortalise the legacy of those who defied their oppressors to humiliate the Nazis, and it remains a symbol of victory against the evils of the world.